Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Offshore. So I did a lot of platform work, oil and gas around the world. And a lot of what I did was what I would call early digital twins, where I was looking for empirical data that I would put into algorithms so I could model what the oil fields were doing and tell whether or not they were optimized. And one of the big ones on Honda, we were doing 50,000 barrels a day. We went through some modeling. I actually got the data out of the well at different routes, and we increased production by 50%. So for $350,000, we went up 25,000 barrels a day. So I'm a big believer in digital twins, getting empirical data from the field and matching that to the algorithms. Because what I've seen too often is when you have suspicions about the way things should work, it's cheap to go out and just get some more data. I've done digital twins with DoD. That's a main focus for them now. You know, they don't want to just build something and think that it's going to work okay. So digital twins means a lot of data. AI has been fun for me to some degree. So I'm going to try to go through this at a fairly rapid pace. And what I'll say is sort of like when I was with Exxon, I had other people that I could ask to do things and do certain programming. I was okay with Fortran, but I had a team that would be able to come in and I'd say, you know, I think if we did this, then maybe we might increase production. So the people that could write the programs would do that, and then I would say, hey, yeah, that worked. I think of artificial intelligence and what we're going through right now as sort of a somebody with ADHD's either favorite thing to do or it just takes them off on a different track. So let's see.
It's a bright and shiny object?
Oh yeah, and I'm known for going after the next bright and shiny object. So it's, you know, you can just keep going down that path into the black hole and you go, I wonder if I ask it if there might be a 1/2-inch choke in a 4-inch flow line. Would that be the reason that we're having these issues? And so what I like to do is I take most of the LLMs and I like to compete them against each other. So when we talk about things going faster because of AI, as a patent attorney, I don't buy it. Because when I see something in a patent, now I'm not typically supposed to be inventing for my clients, but it's hard to resist. When you see something and you have a background, and you look at it and you go, you know, what about if we did this? And then I get them to talk back to me because, you know, they're more affectionate than my kids, so. Yeah, so it's really, I enjoy it. I think there's a lot of elements that people believe, at least from my perspective, that things are going to speed up and get cheaper. I had a private placement memorandum I had to do recently that was, you know, fairly substantial. They were raising $15 million, but they thought, you know, they could get all of their IP for about $6,000. And so I went through and I put together a presentation. I said, you know what, 15 million, you should be thinking about 1 to 2 million for your IP. I said, otherwise, you're not going to have a very good proposal. And so I love it. I think it does a lot for me. And it also lets me know when I'm wrong. And what I'll do is I'll treat it like an adversary at times and say, you know, I think we ought to be able to run fiber from Brownsville in Texas up to the data center in Memphis for 1/10 of the cost of what we usually do. And it'll argue with me. And I'll say, no, you haven't thought about this. So it's just a different way. And I'm a sole practitioner. So I have a paralegal occasionally, and I typically go to a client's office as opposed to them coming to mine. So what I'm finding is that I'm much more productive. Everybody's probably used Wikipedia off and on for getting data, and that used to be my go-to. You know, I'd spend time with Wikipedia because I'd have somebody that was either in medical devices. We were doing imaging with ultra wideband, or we were doing something for DoD to help soldiers so that they wouldn't bleed out when they were in the field. And so from the overall perspective of AI, I don't buy that it's going to make everything faster, quicker, cheaper, because I have seen that I spend much more time providing a higher quality product now than I did when I didn't have AI. Because it just gives me that opportunity to go a direction that I wouldn't have thought of. Now, the one thing I will say, and then I'm going to jump into some slides so I can go that route, is that if you have a background in different areas and you're eclectic, AI is great, because you can learn something pretty quickly. And I think one of the best things it's done for me, I'm on a much steeper curve as far as learning technology. And when I want to find out, if I have this frequency that I want to use in this medical device, is that going to work? And it says, well, there's some issues. And so I can just drill down, and I don't have to go look for the expert. I want to get the expert eventually. But when I look at AI, it gives you a great structural outline for whatever you're doing. I use it for business plans now. It's much faster, but then you have to go in and you have to verify everything. So one of the things I'm going to say tonight is I checked everything out with Perplexity and Claude and ChatGPT. But I did not go to any other source to make sure that everything that I'm going to show you was verified. But I feel pretty good about.
Okay, so what you're saying is that you use one LLM to verify another, as opposed to like drilling down and doing the hard work because it's a pain. Like look up all the citations and blah blah blah.
Yeah, and as an attorney, if I'm in litigation, which I hate, but I do get into it. A case that I've been involved with recently with a pro se plaintiff has sanctions for having 20, and I don't like the word hallucination. It's not deep enough research to verify that the cases were on point. And so it's really interesting. If you get a case that supports your argument, sometimes I think that what the AI is doing is saying, well, there ought to be a case like that. So it's really not, yeah. It's good judgment. But what I try to do is stay as far away from litigation as I can, but it's hard to avoid in business. You still have to do it. So that's a little bit of how I feel about AI. And I'm not, you think about all those people that have been doing the training on the models, right? Tens of thousands to be able to get everything together. And I thank them. And I think it's the most fun thing I've done in my life since I worked for Exxon. And I loved working for Exxon because you were always modeling things, doing different stuff, and then working for Department of Defense Subsea. So I think AI is going to let me do. Go ahead.
Do you want to take questions, Stuart, or do you want to wait till the end?
Go ahead and hit me while we're going through it, okay? Because I'm older, I may forget something.
Same here. So my friend is paralegal, and his law firm kind of is the opposite with AI. They're very averse.
Yep.
They don't want to touch it. They're really worried about the hallucination problem, and they're really worried that if they get caught using it, they could almost like lose their bar or lose their practices, that kind of thing. Their law firm itself is kind of really anti using AI, even to this day.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
wondering if there's that sort of fear too with you, or if you've taken just a whole different approach where you're very open to it because it's turning in good results.
No, I think the benefit is so great that really what people have to do is just say, hey, we're going to work a different way. That means that if I get a case that's on point, I better do the research behind it. That's the reason I say it's not necessarily going to speed things up. It's going to improve the quality. But am I worried about, citing cases? I don't even like to use the word hallucination. I like to use the word, you should have done a little bit more research if you had a case that was right on point, right? Because what it really does good for me on is I get a contract, right? And I think, I've caught everything in this contract. And then I go to the AI, and I go to all three. I said, here's the contract. I think I'm good. And then it brings up things that I'm going, holy crap, I never would have thought of that. And then my clients think I'm brilliant, right? And then I give it to the other side on the contract, and they think, oh God, I wish we'd thought of that. So I'm not worried about it, but then I'm not a litigating firm, right? And it really only comes up, let's say you're doing personal injury, right? You should know every case that's involved in personal injury that's relevant. If you're in corporate or securities, and I do a little bit of everything, I don't do personal injury though. I've done family law once for my family, and that's it. But I do tech, and you should be able to do the research and not worry about it. But if you're in litigation, yeah. But if you're doing tech or software or something like that, it's like, how much do you want to bet on that tool to help you do your job better? And my position is, if you treat it properly, it'll make you much more functional. You'll be on top of things. And then if somebody asks you a question about why did you decide that, then you can provide the answer. But you shouldn't assume that AI is right, for sure, because I've walked it through and, it's been completely wrong.
Yeah, right on. Oh, so, no, please. Yeah, I was just about to say to that point that one has to be really, really careful, especially if you have some obligations to the clients and whatnot, that you don't inadvertently put anything anything on the public domain, right? Because
right.
It's pursuing and it's remembering all that stuff, and it's helping everybody else, not just you, right? It's helping everybody else. So that is a part I get confused quite a bit, especially when it comes to, high-tech research and whatnot.
Okay.
When it comes to that thing, I'm really, really worried, right? I'm very happy to brainstorm and understand, but then I don't want to tread the waters of what do you think about this and stuff like that. So
yeah, it's good for brainstorming ideas, but not necessarily good for the end product of the content creation.
Yeah, because I cannot talk to anybody about the confidential stuff, right?
Yeah.
So that doesn't preclude this.
Yeah, these are very sensitive things, right? When you have to have cases that are real cases.
Yeah, I'm not sure how you navigate that.
Yeah.
You will cover it in.
Yeah, I'm pretty good about it. Number one, everything's generic. Anything that I put in has never happened before if it's legally related. And there was, in the presentation, I was saying something to it and it accidentally picked up a proper name for an entity. And I said, you should know better than that. And it goes, oh, you're right. Why did I leave that in there? So you really need to be generic. But I think the upside is so good that the only issue is that we're going to have to think about how fast do we get a product to market. We have to think about, okay, is a patent really going to protect it? You're going to probably want to go after patents earlier, or you're going to have to make sure that in your company, your trade secret systems are nailed down, that you have the right NDAs, that you have everything tracked. Because if you don't do that, people are moving so fast on patents now because of the AI that you've just got to think of a different way to protect what you're doing. And even with the business plans, I can go pretty fast. You had a question.
Yeah, no, I was just coming to ask, but again, I don't want to slow us down. The only thing that kind of crossed my mind was one of the key things that I was learning as I was kind of getting myself on AI was as you're using these different LLMs, obviously you've got to give it the persona that you have to help support you, right?
Yep.
Are you kind of being very specific on that kind of a starting point that then makes you more productive versus being generic? Because
Yeah, it depends. I'm not specific with entities. I may be more specific with situations, right? But I keep everything very close to the vest. And it's really, sometimes I put more steps in because I don't want to waste a lot of time. Other times I just want to explore. So I give it a sort of a broad scope, and then I try to bring it down into a funnel and figure that out. Uh-huh.
Now with, like, for example, on chat, you've got the projects and you can make those private and all this stuff, which
Mm-hmm.
then limits what visibility it has and what, can you use that to get around this worry that everyone has? I mean, because according to their documentation,
Mhm.
everything I've studied or learned, it's supposed to be very, like,
It's sort of like a firewall in a law firm, right? Yeah, I don't believe they exist. My brother's like in DC and he's a cyber expert, has been for a long time, and we talk about it and he goes, do as good as you can, you just got to create a threshold so that somebody doesn't want to try to get over it. But I think it's going to be extremely hard to keep everything quiet, and I think the business model for everybody, in my opinion, is going to change. So and I don't think we're going to lose a ton of jobs. I think people are going to be redirected to help support the AI to do what it should be doing. So that's me.
You could,
Where's the
mouse is right there.
Oh.
You could also use the.
Oh,
space bar.
okay. All right. So I should be able to just do that. See, I'm really techie. So what have I seen in my work? I've been working on this for 2 years. And I think the biggest thing that I saw is that, oh man, I used to do this with Exxon. I'm going to be able to really crank. And every time I think that I'm getting ahead, they come out with something else. And I just spent, a month trying to put that together. So where are we now? Well, LLMs, and this is sort of from a legal standpoint, it does change the way I do document analysis, the way I do research, the way I do technical writing. It improves I think I've got a pretty good vocabulary, but it gets better. Because I'll sit there and I'll just tell you, just on the title for this, I used AI. I went through 15. Because I wanted the right title. What am I really talking about? And so it helps, and does it help with innovation? Yeah. But if you get anything from it, and you consider it innovation, we have that issue of who's the inventor. My position with clients is the AI, until there's a case that says it's going to be an inventor, is not going to file a patent application. Humans in the loop are going to file the patent application. So for contracts and specification drafting, yeah, it's faster, but what you really find out is you become more thorough. Have you ever written anything and said, well, I think that's right? It's sort of like in Apple when I read books now, and I've had these words that I never knew what they meant, and I just took them in context, right? But now when I read a book on my iPhone, I go, I wonder what that word means. So I look it up. Same thing with AI. If you have a doubt, or you're doing due diligence, which is what I'll use it for when somebody else has something that they're presenting to me, I'll do my due diligence with AI and go a little bit deeper. So it does cut a lot of the analysis from hours to minutes across disciplines, but
sorry, quickly, would you be sharing the slides? Are you allowed to take photos or anything like that?
I'm going to let everybody have a copy.
Awesome.
It's copyrighted, right? But
So
no.
What I'll do is I'll write a blog based on the video.
Okay.
And if you're okay with it, I'll go ahead and post the slides.
No, I think everybody ought to know about this because I think it's going to change everybody's lives. So, and it's definitely impacting mine. Yes.
To the earlier question about privatized AIs,
Mhm.
have you started using the desktop versions of things?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's nice is who could believe that we'd have this iPhone that can run all of this high-tech analysis with AI, right? And that's all you really need. But no, I use this desktop a lot as well. But when I'm someplace else having lunch or something,
Oh, no, what I mean is an LLM that
It's locally installed. I didn't, yeah.
oh, locally installed?
thank you, that's
Yeah,
what,
I was gonna say, I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
Your Google Drive or something that
Yeah.
can do stuff for you.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
with whatever.
No, I haven't, but one of the reasons is because I looked at the cost for operations to support that. It can be a little bit high depending on what you're looking for, how much training you've done, how much you want to get out of it. So I've had some colleagues that have wanted to do some AI for patent production. And so I sat down with them, they actually implemented some software, and it turns out that the cost of the servers and everything else was too much, which surprised me.
They were using it for patent production and prosecution?
More production, I didn't see, but prosecution ought to be straightforward too, I
Like
think.
specs, basically? And drawings?
Did you say specs? Well, for the specification, you can use it. And I tell you, you can have 10 different specs depending upon the question and how you change it. So what I try to do now, which is hard, is really understand what the client wants to do. Because if you change a few words, you've got the business going in a completely different direction. And you can support it. So that's where we are. It does work. I like it. It hasn't gotten anything out faster. Matter of fact, I think some clients have been pissed at me because I've taken longer to get some things done. But at the end of the day, you know, when you're looking at a value-based approach, you've got to communicate that to the client. That's a little bit difficult because they're used to an hourly billing situation. They go, well, you know, if that's going to cut it down to a tenth, then what was 40 hours ought to be 4 hours. And I go, well, okay, I'll hire you to do that then. So where are we now? The learning curve. I think it really takes 100 to 200 hours to get to anything. Of course, that's me that doesn't do programming all the time, okay? But I do understand projects, flow, optimization. So when it comes to applications, I'm okay. But it's taken me more than that because I started when it had very little power, right? And so a couple hundred hours, then there are limitations in specialized domains that I've run into because a lot of the technology I work with is fairly diverse, from bunker bombs to medical devices to software, you name it, underwater. And if it doesn't have the right variables or empirical data, it can be just completely off. So I haven't run too many equations through it, and it's known AI is for not being that great with equations.
Yeah.
Right? It's supposed to be getting better.
Equations, you said?
Math.
Basic math?
Oh, yeah.
Well, basic math, but I sort of look at it as an algorithm with more moving targets, you know, fuzzy logic, other things like that, you know, putting different filters on empirical data to try to get the heart rate separate from your respiratory rate. So it's got a little ways to go, but I think anybody can work on it and get it there pretty quickly.
I think it definitely, what I've seen, it wants to elaborate a lot and
Yeah.
expand and
Oh yeah,
be more grandiose, and it does that with equations too. So.
yeah. Oh, it drives me nuts when I'm seeing all this stuff going down, you know, after I ask it a simple question, you know, like, no, I just want to know if you can put an appendix in a patent application because somebody did that and I'd never seen it. And it gives me this long, drawn-out description of, no, you can't.
Could you ask it to then condense that? Because what it's doing is basically searching through everything and parsing as it goes. Right?
I could, but you know what? My personality is such that, you know, the next shiny object, I'm afraid I might miss something.
I see.
But what I do is you know, how it goes down and then it rolls everything up. While it's still thinking, I'll go back and I'll roll everything down and read what's in there and see if there's anything else that I'd miss. You know, it's sort of like, you know, I don't like to go to bed early because I'm afraid I'm going to miss something. And AI is making that worse. So there are limitations in specialized domains. Math is just one of them. And I really believe this human expertise and oversight is essential. And, you know, I know Elon Musk with the robots and everything else. Yeah, eventually, theoretically, what are they saying? Supposed to be able to get there in 2 more years. But I don't think so. You know, I think it's going to get better, but it's going to allow us to learn more and do something else. What's going to be interesting is to see how it affects all of society. Oh, shoot, I forgot. I thought you were doing this. I didn't realize I was supposed to be doing it. So contract analysis,
Sorry, I was just going to say
Sure.
quickly, I think to the point you just made, one thing I've noticed, and I'm a heavy user of Claude and Chat, is that Chat 5.2 version is much worse than 5.1. I've
Yeah.
actually had to digress back to 5.1 because they rushed the models out faster.
Yep.
And they're missing a lot of stuff that was working perfectly well.
No, I agree. And when you think about it, since a lot of it's based upon training, you can go like this and go the wrong way. So that's going to be interesting to see how they maintain the quality on that.
I always thought 5.2 was more about saving the company money. It's supposed to be faster.
It's supposed, I mean, the way they.
Not necessarily better for us,
Yeah,
but better for the
yeah,
company.
better for them, obviously.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, it's actually costing more money to use it.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, by the way, I'd like to know, who do we have here in the audience? Is everybody, who's in tech? Just about everybody. Who's in investing in tech?
That's the moment.
Well, just, do you have money and you put it into something? Yeah.
In my own.
Yeah, okay. And anybody in medical?
I was.
Okay, okay. Anybody in environmental? Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. But environmental is going to do great because the way I look at it, when I was with Exxon, that's what I was doing every day, trying to prevent oil spills, trying to make sure that things were done right.
Especially now that we have Venezuela's oil, right?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. Everybody talks about it's great, but do they realize it's low gravity crude? It's sort of like Bakersfield, but not quite as bad,
But that's what our refineries are set
Yeah.
up to handle, right? So,
We handle heavy
Right.
crude versus the light crude.
Yeah, it's just you change the column, right? And you take different weights off in the column. But no, heavy crude, you just get different products out of it. Oxnard Plains, they have a ton of tar there, but, you can't get as much out of it. And if you get higher gravity, and I'm having to dig back because it's been a while since I've been doing, well, no, I am doing some oil and gas, but it's more focused on CO2 sequestration and seismic now. But no, they can design the refineries and they know right off the bat whether it's going to be profitable or not because they know what the product will be, how much they can produce.
It's all free, right? It's all free, correct?
Yeah. And the big,
that you have drafting assistance at the bottom, so you're not using it for generative, you're using it more for comparison, is that correct?
well, I use it to get it first an outline. I have in my mind what I think is going to work, or if a client comes with a concept, I'm obligated to look and see if that's going to work. But I also, one of the problems we have as an attorney, even though I'm an engineer, I'm really not supposed to help that much to improve the invention.
I see.
I just had this discussion the other day, with a client that was happy with what I did, but then I was talking to the bar, and they said, "Oh no, just patent and protect what they do." I said, "So how about if I just quit being an attorney, and I do the same thing without a bar license, and then, then I can give them advice?" They said, "Well, yeah, you could do that," because I feel like it's my job to help.
But here, you're not talking about drafting patents, you're talking, or generating ideas, you're talking about drafting contracts,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So is that at the bottom of your number 4 on your list for a reason?
No, I just I like to have no more than 4 things on there. There's a few more, but if you look at clause identification, risk flagging, I don't think AI is really that great, but I put it in there so that everybody would say, okay, let's look for that. But it can, if you have boilerplate, it will tell you if you're missing boilerplate. Comparative analysis, it's good at that. Digital twins, that kind of stuff, I think it's great. But drafting assistance is when I say, hey, look, I've got this contract, I'm doing a solar energy project with some battery, and the contractor wants to charge this much. And I go, I'd like to have information on the actual cost of this kind of work. It gives me great negotiating power. But I ask for multiple, sort of like I have 3 LLMs, so I get 3 bids from the LLMs. So it puts me in a position to where I know when I'm negotiating for a client on a contract that I'm in the ballpark. And when they say, oh, no, it's another, $200,000, I go, oh, okay, why? So that's what I like it for the drafting assistance, and it'll tell you. But one thing you need to do is you need to tell it to tell you. Otherwise, it'll go, Ken, great job. Man, you're handsome too. I know it's lying now, So, so the reality, there's significant time investment. I don't think this is a lot, but I am sort of an instant gratification person, and that's the same 100 to 200 hours just to get something rolling, depending upon what your background is. If you're good at logic, AI is great. Flow diagrams, and it's interesting that it really doesn't do 3D drawings very well for tech. It's fine with flow diagrams and 2D and unicorns, but if I ask it to do a simple mechanical design, it's not there. And that'll come up later. So month 1 and 2, I think if you're dedicated, you've got a steep learning curve. You figure out what works in your field, because you can take the LLM, and as you're working with it, it'll adapt to what your needs are. And then 3 or 4, domain-specific workflows. And that's what I did all the time at Exxon, because things were flowing. So, and then month 4, you start to see productivity gains materialize. But I'll be honest, it's costing me more money because of my clients' expectations that I'm going to get it done faster. And my focus is better, more thorough.
And again, you're telling them you're using AI.
Yeah.
And that's why they're expecting you.
Yep. Yeah, like on that private placement memorandum, I just had to smirk when he was talking, and I won't say any names, but I mean, it was a big project, and then saying IP, I'm going to budget maybe 20,000. And I said, well, it's nice knowing you. You're going to raise 15 to 30 million, and you're going to have that much?
And by law, you have to tell them you're using AI for.
No, you do not have to.
Just being kind to them like
If you're in court,
that. Okay.
and you don't say something, some courts have rules now to where you need to indicate that you're doing AI, and it's necessary because I think more people are going to do like pro se. They're going to think, hey, I can litigate. I'm really good at it. And then they're going to have 20 cases and they get sanctioned $30,000. And then they go, oh, maybe I don't like litigating. So it's going to be interesting.
Are you going to give us examples of domain-specific workflows?
I don't remember because I was working on another patent before I got up here, but I think so. And if I don't, critical limitations, hallucinations, and fabrication, just do the work. And if you have any doubt whatsoever, and if, like on case law, you've got to read it. If you don't go in and read it, then you're in trouble. And then the domain-specific nuances, because I do a lot of different technologies, I see it change its attitude, like on economic analysis. If I'm doing a medical device and it's looking for the total available market, or I'm doing oil and gas, or I'm doing fiber optics, you got to be careful because it'll take what you said before and puts it in its memory and then tries to extend that to the next project you're on. So, and then this one drives me nuts, the context window constraints and inability. It can only do, I hate it when I get, and I've gone up on the price for the LLMs, but then I was with Claude and it said, oh, you're at 90%. So you're almost through. And I'm thinking, yeah, like what if I was right in the middle of saving to somebody and then you cut me off at 90%? So I think eventually that's going to have to go to whatever can be done. But, the data centers cost a lot. And again, as I mentioned, numerical and mathematical reasoning, it's not reliable with complex calculations. In financial modeling, as we all know, you can change 1 or 2 variables and make a company that sucks make it look like it's going to do well. With in REL and doing energy analysis, I've seen that where somebody wants to get under that number of cost per kilowatt. So they change a couple of things so that they can get there. You can lead AI down the path of giving you the answer you'd like to present to somebody. So you've got to be really careful about that. I've never done that. I haven't had the chance. It's always stayed ahead of me. And then professional judgment and strategy. That's where I come in. You know, that's really where it makes a difference.
I'd be worried about even simple calculations.
Yeah.
You know, ChatGPT couldn't do even order of operations correctly at some level. So, yeah. So just kind of, like, as anything, check for them to work. Don't assume that it knows what it's doing.
Yeah, and it's funny because when you think about how AI is trained, and when I was at Exxon, you know, I was using programs and programming and everything was right on, but that was the human in the loop. You know, I was doing Fortran, I was collecting data, but I didn't have all of this other knowledge from an AI. I'm sort of dying to look at Venezuela and say, okay, we can probably increase your production by 10x, 20x, probably 50x from what I know. And I did some work down there years ago, and they're not set up really, except for what Chevron does, to do a good job. And AI can help them put something together to where they can do a good job.
For your own domain, I saw a story today. Apparently, like 3 out of 20 ports in Venezuela are functional. So there's definitely a huge opportunity there.
Only 3 are functional?
Out of 20 or something. It's or
Wow.
up to modern standards at least.
Yep. Yeah.
I have a question about Venezuela.
Sure.
I don't want to like get off into some thing, but Guyana is right there.
Uh-huh.
Right? And Guyana has huge reserves, right?
Mm-hmm.
So why?
Well, I assume they do. I've got to ask AI, but I think they do.
Okay, I think we are reasonably confident that the majors are reasonably confident that the substantial reserves, like 20% or whatever reserves, overlap that area and could be siphoned from different points within that basin, let's say.
Sure.
Take over Guyana as well.
Well, that's my other question. So if the problem here is fundamentally incorrect assumptions and then incorrect calculations on top of assumptions, let's say toward looking for cost-benefit analysis of, I don't know, sending troops in.
Okay.
And then your return once you get control. And what if all of that could be? You're saying that it can be. They're very simple, fundamental mistakes that are made over and over again because it's not just once, right?
Yeah, because that's really what I did with Exxon was production optimization. And so I put algorithms together, collected data when we didn't have good things to collect data, and it just worked. So I think in any other field, I worked with SO in France and other locations, and I just think that any other oil field, except for Saudi Arabia, because it's so easy, you know, drill a hole and let it go. But any place else where you have artificial lift or other issues with getting the oil out of the ground, you'd want to use something like AI. And there's a fellow named Kermit Brown that I followed, and his expertise was nodal analysis. So you have node A, you have node B. They're connected by something in between. You know that if it's a 4-inch flow line, then by the friction at node B, you should be getting this much pressure and this much flow. But if you have a 1/2-inch choke in the 4-inch flow line, which we really found offshore on one of our platforms, and I can say this, and it was Exxon, and the operations personnel had intentionally put a 1/2-inch choke in the 4-inch flow line just to keep things going. So oil and gas would benefit greatly from this, and all you have to do is collect the empirical data and start modeling.
So, kind of bringing back this limitation issue, I'm curious what degree of statutory and regulatory artificial intelligence legislation are you tracking? You've got the ADMT here in California, you have the Civil Rights Council, HR, last in October. What have you looked at, and what have you said, oh, okay, this could impact what I'm doing as a professional services provider?
Well, anything that's legislative can always impact, and so I expect something to happen, but I'm more on the side of don't restrain it unless there's going to be some harm, and spend your time figuring out if there is going to be harm. But from a legal perspective, I think they're just as much worried about how that's going to play into crypto, which I'm not an expert in, right? And other value producing efforts to where, you know, normal currency is not going to be that important, and there's going to be more like arbitrage and trade. So I think the big thing is sort of like HIPAA, right, in medical, and how you have to keep everything confidential.
The reason I ask, and I'm somewhat selfishly, so I specialize in what essentially is risk management within
Okay.
statutory regulatory confines of, I'm also a CalBar trainer, so
Okay.
I teach other attorneys on the topic of this regulatory statutory issue, risk within their law, within their practice. But my concern is more so the message that I'm giving to attorneys who are asking about AI use within their practice. So this is extremely valuable to me, seeing
Okay.
you know, the limitations. But I'm seeing all this legislation coming, and dominantly California. You know,
Sure. Yeah, they want to be at the
yeah.
lead.
And so if you've looked at any of it, you know, or is there anything that made you stand up and go, this one's gonna, you know, slow it down or speed it up, or, you know, and if you haven't looked at it at all, it's fine.
Yeah, no, I have looked at it, but I don't spend a lot of time on it. To be honest, what I do is I ask AI. I said, could you give me an update on any legislation that's come out that could be negative or positive or neutral? And because I can't bill for that time, I do enough to where I think I'm on top of it, but I'm not. But I'm good enough. But I think.
Well, we bill for it as risk managers, so.
Oh, well, maybe I should be thinking about that. Yeah.
Like we refer to attorneys, but your point on domain-specific influence and recent regulatory changes is, I've experienced the same thing, and I also know that at least within the coding base, if you're building code, that there is new legislation that is called ADMT here in California, automated decision-making technology oriented legislation that was supposed to go into effect January 1st this year. So
And what will that do?
it's going to force anyone that has more than 25 million in revenue to expose their risk position around the harm that AI can do,
Okay.
harm-oriented,
Yeah.
as it relates to human safety or discrimination, all the things you would expect.
Yeah, and I think a great
Financial statement.
yeah.
Way, so.
When I did in a PPM, you have this huge risk section in a private placement memorandum when you're trying, and so when I went into the client, they had about this much of risks that the potential investors needed to be concerned about, and now they have like this much.
Bigger width.
Yeah. But it's going to be interesting. If it's used wrong, people can do bad things with it. I think all of us could think of something bad to do with it, right?
I think that, well, that's the interest. What does wrong really mean if there's no precedent? I mean, it's all de novo, as we say,
Yeah,
right? So it's all
yeah.
new in the
Yeah.
courts. So
No,
I think every professional services engage, because that's what you're talking about here. You have to use it a professional service.
that's
provider.
right. Yeah.
Right, everyone's looking at going, oh, okay, is my industry over?
Yeah.
Yeah. Or am I using this to to fast track and beat my competition? Then you look at the business side. Right? So I think that's my question is considering that things are changing, it's just a matter of time before legislation says we don't like that and things change. But until then, you're going fast clearly with its use, and I think everyone else in this room wants to know how heavy on the gas pedal.
Yeah.
At least as a professional services provider, it concerns me, but I think developers are, kind of in that same boat as well, being asked to go faster with AI. So.
Yeah, I would think that, I'll say experience, not age, is a prerequisite to manage that properly, because I can think about when I was back, 25 years old, I would have taken a much different approach than what I do now, because I think the risks that are identified are manageable. And they're manageable because you can also refer to AI for risk management and mitigation.
Yeah.
And then so that's going to be a domain specific area that it addresses. And with some of the medical work that I'm doing, you know, you wouldn't not want it to be there because they're coming up with things that are actually providing therapeutic benefit for patients. They wouldn't even be there if it weren't for the AI. But that's a great question. Sure.
Do you have any thoughts on that middle context window constraints? You would think that, you know, an extremely long documentation comparison would be its strongest point.
Mm-hmm.
And you're saying that it's a huge limitation. Any thoughts on why?
I think it's just server capability, and maybe somebody else in the room that's more informed in that area, but there's only so much that they can take, and they do get these periods where they just can't take any more activity. So by putting a red light at 1,000 pages, I don't think it's a real limitation, right? But you have to buy some more GPUs probably.
1,000 pages?
You
Yeah.
tried out Google's Notebook LM for your research and
You know, I've been,
interrogation, because you can put in thousands and thousands of PDFs and
yeah, I've been tempted. I just, you know, I just figured that'd be another time sink for me. But I think it'd be great for the
Google
law.
product, so it's
Yeah.
actually pretty easy to use. It's like a storage. You just drop docs and images and whatever you want,
Mm-hmm.
topic or a case or whatever, and then you talk to it. You know,
Well, see, now you're going to force me. I'm going to have to go look at it now.
it's worth the 10 minutes.
Yeah.
You can-
Is it?
Isn't that the same with the
It's
Okay.
great, actually.
Yeah, you click a button and it makes a podcast
Yeah, that's
that
great.
gives
Which,
like
which Google product branding is that again?
Notebook LM.
Oh, Notebook
Yeah.
I love it.
It's
I was
That's
actually
popular,
gonna
that's
say that, for me,
It's
that,
perfect for this.
that piece there has been the kind of the thorn in my side when I've been doing any kind of development.
Which piece?
Context constraints.
Yeah.
So things that I've done, and I was gonna actually ask one question before I was gonna get to this, but I'll save my piece.
Okay.
So I've created, like, my workflow typically, and I think may have spoken about this, is typically as I start a session, I always say, keep a track of tokens. So that's the first thing I give it as a rule.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, when you get to an 80 percentile, I want you to notify me, and then create continuation documents so I can go into the next session and have a continuation document to not lose any momentum.
Right.
So that's a pattern I've created that has been consistently well. Not perfect, but well.
Yeah, I think, you know, I did the same thing. I move things into projects and get it out of just being in the chat, and I'll copy and paste it into a Word document because I have lost some stuff initially, and I was pissed. You know, spend a day on it, and then all of a sudden, where'd it go?
Now, the question that I was going to ask, and actually there is a way around that as well. If you look
Okay.
at when you see things erroring, or it says retry, and you go, Jesus, I just typed so much in, and now it's
Yep.
gone.
Mm-hmm.
If you right-click on the agent that you see in the bar at the bottom,
Right.
you get a pop-up window, and then there's a second option there that says open up a second agent.
Oh,
If
to
you do that,
branch?
it actually brings back the memory into the first one.
Oh, I didn't know
So
that.
I found this out the hard way, so that's an interesting.
Yeah, that's good to know.
So the question I was going to ask was, way back when I started getting into AI, there was always a cutoff window of data,
Mm-hmm.
right? They're kind of teaching, right? Obviously, I haven't checked into that more recently, but I'm just wondering, maybe this is a broader question. Does that play into what you're doing? Because if, for example, there was the RAG model where you could now tell it to go search and do a bunch of other
Right.
things, but if it's still using older, not more recent or more up-to-date data, does that impact what you're doing?
Well, it would, right? Because the law, you can have a case happen one day and the entire world changes. So you would like to have something that's updated. And when it was, what was it, 19? It was still 2 years behind ChatGPT, I think, at a certain point on the law. That was a big problem because you couldn't rely on anything to be current. So I think they realized that they've got to be current on most things that are legislatively mixed in, risk mixed in. But yeah, keeping the information there and making it current. What I hope is happening too is when I'm working with it, it sort of brings things to you, right? That's relevant to your area of interest. So I'm hoping it keeps me more informed than what I would do normally.
So in terms of the research frontier and the context window, there have been lots and lots of people working on So the context length is limited by, there's a set of matrices that have to work together to connect the first word all the way to the last word that it needs to pay attention to.
Yep.
So it grows by the square of the context.
Mm-hmm.
So there have been a lot of research to get it linear, and most of that is starting to roll up, so it's starting to get longer faster. There's actually even some research to try and get infinite context.
That would be sweet. Sort of like the area of a circle, right, based upon the radius. You go out a little bit and then it's squared, and then all of a sudden, and I think we're going to see that, and that's the reason I was shocked when they were building these massive data centers initially. No, I'm not. I get it, you know. You can have one person ask one question and then 10 do. But that's a good point. So do you think that we'll keep having more data centers built?
Well, people are coming up with new architecture ideas that should,
Okay.
I think some of them are very promising to reduce that quickly. So going from square to linear is, I think, coming this year.
Oh, really? And what about quantum? You know, I always like to look into it just because I think it's neat, but I wouldn't tell anybody it's going to be okay, but I have told a few people that I think it will eventually be okay, but who knows when. But that could make a big difference, right? So.
Well, I don't know if it directly affects the ones that are doing they call it simulated annealing versions of quantum.
Mm-hmm.
Those will probably have effect on the searches and things like that.
Okay.
But I don't know how close they are.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
That's NVIDIA's next big bet, actually.
Pardon?
That's NVIDIA's next big bet. So they want to have the existing AI infrastructure to be front end,
Okay.
and for special applications such as chemistry, new materials,
Mhm.
pharmaceuticals, and whatnot, they want to use quantum as a backend.
That would
the
make
hybrid
sense.
computing
Yeah.
is the most happening stuff right now.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, at least to me, but I'm not an expert, but that does make a lot of sense. So I've talked about the 1/2-inch choke and the 4-inch flow line. The big thing is I think we're going to continue to see unexpected bottlenecks and gaps where AI falls short, and it does. Just when you think you're going to be able to get to a point that you're going to be able to get the right answer or in it. But technical diagrams and visualizations. I don't need purple polka dotted unicorns in my work, you know, and I know for artists and everything that's great, but and other people do, but basically that's because what? I need vector, but LLMs and AI, it's all raster. So it's just bits, right? And I need 3-dimensional. That's what I'd prefer to have. So that's one of the limitations. Domain-specific formatting for regulatory submissions. Even though I use it to do things that I can be in a format that's proper, it's like I ask it to put a bike rack on the back of a car and do a drawing. I've probably done that about 50 times, and it cannot understand that I want the front wheel up above the rear wheel. So it has some interesting limitations that can come up. Multi-document cross-references. You've got to consider how that's going to affect consistency with large document sets, because it's sort of like who trained that, and if you have different document sets, you're probably going to get a different answer possibly. And then the iterative refinement cycles. And that's all I did at Exxon when I was modeling things. If I'd either be out in the field getting more data because it didn't fit, or I'd be at the computer mainframe in Houston because it didn't fit. So we're going to keep iterating on training the entire time. And the question is, who's going to decide what training is enough and what training is appropriate? So there's going to be more than that, but I thought, anybody else see other limitations that are going to come up with AI that stand out?
One thing is if your temperature is too high, that doesn't produce the same format every single time. So if you're trying to work with chunks, the first chunk might not match the second chunk, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do some extra work to make that consistent.
Yeah, I think, you know, okay, I got my patent thing all done, and I can just use AI, and I put in my information, and it gives me a different format. So it's a little bit frustrating because you spend a lot of time trying to get that right so that you can speed everything up, and then it doesn't give it to you.
I think one of the things I've noticed, sorry, is also creation of documents to download.
Mm-hmm.
Like you say, the formatting, it's not just the formatting, it actually, I've seen it literally say it's created a document and then you look at it and it's one blank page.
Yep.
Yeah, I've had that happen. Yeah. Yeah, I've been.
It goes through like 6 iterations and then finally goes, oh, you know what, my codex this can't allow me to create that, so please copy and paste from the screen. And you're like, damn it.
I had that like 6 times today. It said, okay, well, here's, your list of drawings. And I go, can't you just put it in there?
Exactly.
Why do I have to do it? It's just Word. Come on.
Yeah, the distinction between AI and LLM is not arbitrary, right?
Right.
The same reason it can't understand why you want the tire higher, the front
Uh-huh.
wheel higher than the back wheel, is the same reason why it can't design 3-dimensional pipes. It's because it doesn't have, it's not modeling an understanding of the problem. It's modeling a language around the problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's modeling a way of describing with words through a magical word space of infinite vector matrix.
Right.
But it never actually models the problem.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Because what I thought about, I mentioned Kermit Brown from Texas A&M and his nodal analysis. I mean, he's got all the equations and everything else, and I've thought, I should just throw that into one of the AIs, one of the LLMs, see what I get. That's what I used to use 30 years ago.
Yeah, it can produce remarkably human-like outputs,
Mm-hmm.
things you never thought of, things that really make you think or that change your mind. But it's not creating them because it has detailed knowledge. It doesn't think the way that people think, but it talks the way that people talk.
Yeah, and yeah.
One way I've heard it said is it's word thinking, it's not conceptual thinking.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
But,
Yeah,
but,
have a sentience.
but maybe it is conceptual, but we can't assume it's
If you
conceptual.
get a certain other guy from Facebook who's working on that exact problem, he's got a thinking model, and it turns out you can actually build something like an LLM, but it's built on concepts instead of tokens, and the relationships are between
Okay.
ideas. And it's a truly that. What's interesting about these models is that they are extraordinarily tiny compared to the large language models because it's just a tighter, more compact problem. It's probably the way our brains actually are operating.
How long do you think it'll take for something like that to come into the...
They already have them produced and are testing them, but
Okay.
they have to sort of be linked up to LLMs,
Mhm.
sort of like a middleman where
Mm-hmm.
they process, sort of like what we do now with thinking models where they sort of self-reflect. These are going to be like, they'll replace the thinking part of those models and they'll do all the crunching of the great idea creation and all of that thinking and then
Mhm.
spit back to an LLM to
Well, that,
regurgitate.
that could eventually be great if it can produce things that will help take care of society, right? That's the big thing I'm concerned about is...
Yeah, it's just going to make it more intelligent.
Yeah.
More
Projected evolution, and everybody's got their own curve, but here we are right now, where we're at about 20 to 40, if you believe what Claude said, or Anthropic just said that they've already reached that point to where their coding is better than humans. So I put that into Claude and said, I just read a press release, and let me give it back to you from your CEO, and it disagreed. But, I don't think that's that unusual. 80% in about 4 years with the kind of progress that we're seeing. But it's a question of 80% doing what?
Yeah, doing what?
Yeah.
80% of crap is 80% of crap, right?
Yeah.
80% of the code I wrote is crap. I don't know what.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're.
Well, and the thing that bugs me is I never did Python. And now every time I'm working on a project, it says, well, we can do some Python. I go, wow. So,
Can I ask you why you lean toward a linear progression?
and I think that came from over here. I lean to linear because that's the way I think. So if I put something in like a prompt and something comes back, I'm not going to go in, I already go in enough different
I
directions.
think in the previous slide.
Oh, and that slide? Oh, I don't know. I would have to ask Anthropic, but that's the data that I got of where it's supposed to be in about 4 years. And if you listen to others, they're saying 2 years. And others are saying, oh, we're already there. So I just look at how can I use it for what I'm doing and let the smarter people figure that out.
It's an exponential growth plotted on a log scale.
It's assumptive, right?
It's exponential growth, but they're plotting on a log scale. It looks
I
linear.
see. Thank you. That's very helpful. I'm gonna be up at night thinking.
Yeah. This is what I believe, and I know there's a lot of pushback on this, but I think it's going to augment work, not replace people. It couldn't, it'd have to be awfully smart to do even a little bit of what I'm doing. And it's not that I'm that smart, but I'm more informed in my field of work. So what is the myth? AI is going to replace professionals and eliminate knowledge work jobs. Well, I used to rely on Wikipedia, and I'm still here. So, and what are the tasks that are going to be automated? Initial document review and analysis, yes, I use it for that now. Standard drafting and templates, yes. Basic research and summarization, yes. But that excludes the real world aspects of what are you running into for every contract, every project, what are the materials you're using, blah, 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 blah. So I think that's sort of a myth, but it's the reality. It'll augment professionals, enabling higher value work and better outcomes. But you got to watch it, because you strategic decision making. I haven't had a lot of luck with it on that, except in some areas. Client stakeholder relationships. I haven't had to use it for that, and I'm afraid if I did that, it wouldn't be what I would normally do. And then negotiation and creative problem solving. Yeah, it can give you point by point by point if you give it to it, but I think we're still going to be around for that.
Yeah, what I always say, it's not AI that's going to take your job, it's the person using AI that's going to take
Yeah,
your job.
yeah. So, what's the value proposition? Quality over speed? That's what I think, because I've seen too many people already in the legal arena that say, oh, well, this would normally take me 40 hours. I've got a case coming up, got a hearing coming up, better get it knocked out right away. And then they lose the case because they didn't consider all the subtleties.
Because they didn't check their work.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
didn't build that into the work.
Yep. So we will get speed enhancement. I'm faster, but what that actually does is it moves me more quickly into questionable aspects of what I'm doing for a case or negotiating or the patent that I'm drafting. So I think you'll get more thorough analysis, you get multiple perspectives, and I ask it to have different personas, right? And it's pretty interesting to see some of the responses when I say, well, you're no longer the chief operating officer of this group, you are now in this position. What do you think of that? And it changes, which shocks me. And then systematic error checking, that's going to be important. It is important, and it can do that already. But I don't know how far it will go. And then consistent application of standards. It should be a quality enhancement. I haven't seen it do that well. Even when I'm preparing a document, and I say, okay, I want this font, I want this spacing, I want to have this, and it comes back, and it's sort of like saying, hey, look, Dad, look what I gave you. And it's not there.
There's a tool called Manus that actually does a lot of that really well.
Manus?
Yeah, to get fonts.
Yeah, I've used it, and I actually like it. The only problem is with some of my clients, I can't do anything that's sourced in China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've been pretty impressed. I've still used it, but not for anything that is,
That violates that.
Yeah. But I had it do some things like the bicycle deal, still failed. It couldn't figure out to put the bicycle wheel up above the rear wheel. So I haven't had one that would do that. And this is a real world example. A recent contract, That's where it had the name in there of the company, and I had it take it out. But it enabled me to do more revision cycles, not fewer. Each iteration was better. I had to be able to tell that it was better. And then the final contract was more comprehensive, better protected my client's interests. If we had gone with what I was going to do right out of the gate, which was okay, because we've all got these treatises that we refer to, and then I realized mine was 20 years old, and so it's just going to help. But you've got to drive the bus to know where it's going to take you. Yeah.
I've got a little friction here on this topic.
Okay.
Because, and George, we spoke about this a couple of weeks back, where the greater group of people out there that are driving the AI buses are saying, don't worry, right? We're talking about law when I was talking about my son, right? I mean, don't worry, everything's going to be fine, right? You're still going to have a job. This is 10, 15, 20 years out. But on the other hand of it, right, on this other side, when people like us are digging in and we are making things happen and we are evolving faster and faster, and then you see this competition between China and us and the way things are, whether it's reality or whether it's fictional reality, I don't know, right? But are your timelines, are your expectations honestly, you're seeing it, or are you saying, I'm hoping it's there?
Timelines for?
So how AI is suddenly going to replace versus it's enhancing, whether it's controlled, whether it's managed, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think if you took like specific topics, don't just train arbitrarily, but you said, okay, let's put, and actually I'd like to do this. I'd like to get, 50 smart techies from the university and not hire, but one other patent attorney, put them all into a group and say, okay, now we are going to do as many patents as we can on as much technology as we can, because that's what China's doing. And I have a lot of friends that are Chinese, so I don't want to say that there's anything negative, but they're doing some great things. And are we going to, so I've done export-import compliance on hardware. And so this isn't political, I just would be reluctant to allow NVIDIA to sell their chips if we really feel like they're a competitor, right? I just wouldn't let it happen. But that was the policy that I was working under. I guess they're thinking it's more money, or if everybody could just do a kumbaya, bring it all up and not use it for offensive weapons, I think that's great. That's my concern, because it goes real fast. You go, okay, what's that building made of? What's the material? What kind of explosives do we need? So that's a good point. And one interesting thing, my son is with a quasi-startup down in LA, and he's doing AI for logistics and moving product around, and they've let a lot of their people go because they don't need them to do it anymore. So that is going to happen. That's for sure. The time management trap. This is what I call sort of the behavioral issues. There's a lot of benefit, but the challenge is I love doing it. If I could just do that all day and have somebody walk and say, hey, Ken, could you look into this? I said, yeah, I'm there. But I needed a 30-minute presentation, right? And it came 3 hours of iterating on design, adding slides, refining charts, while critical client deliverables are untouched, right? So I'm not billing, I should be, but I'm not, because I'm having a blast with that. And the work feels productive because it's engaging. But you're optimizing the wrong thing if you want to make money, unless you come up with a really great concept through it. And I think I'm going to, but, So what is the strategies that I do not follow? Complete critical non-AI tasks first each day. Never happened with me. Set strict time limits per AI project. Never happened with me. Use AI as a reward after no, forget it. Track actual time versus value delivered. You're going to get, it's like gamers. right? Who here used to be a gamer and be honest?
I still am.
Yeah, okay.
Long time.
Yeah. What keeps you, after Call of Duty and my son started kicking my butt, I just quit because I felt like I was getting addicted and then played Halo. But, how do you differentiate from a knowledge exploration standpoint? I love this. It's like gaming. So people are going to get addicted. I'm already addicted to it. So I just think it's an interesting dilemma. But, and I asked, I'm going to tell you, I did a lot of this with AI over 3 hours. And I said, you know what? I'm a little ADHD. There's no way that management strategy will work with me. It wouldn't have worked at Exxon, So, and it just said, well, that's what you should do. I go, okay.
So, excuse me. So, would you suggest you do those things, or you suggest AI not do those things?
I don't. I think that's great for, like my wife, she's a teacher, right? And she's disciplined and she can do things and she doesn't fall back. But I don't. If I'm starting to go down a rat hole that's really interesting, I keep doing that. So, but I stop. I do deliverables. I don't do it forever, but I do it a lot more. It's almost like I'm a gamer.
Well, it's better than doom scrolling on social networks.
Yeah. And this is the one that I love. Is anybody familiar with the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Overconfidence.
Yeah. So it's a cognitive bias where people with limited knowledge, actually people, I would argue, even with more knowledge in a domain, overestimate their competence. Like I had this private placement memorandum and I hadn't done one in 3 years. So I thought, AI, I'm going to get up to speed real quick. They don't know enough to recognize what they don't know. There's an old Garfield cartoon poster that used to be out there that was like, it's amazing what one can do when one doesn't know what one can't do. And what was that puppy that was always with
Otis.
Yeah.
Odie, yeah.
And it was in my dentist's office, and it always resonated with me.
So the Greeks have this word called sophomore, right, which is a wise fool.
Oh.
In the second year of life in an educational institution.
Really?
Right, knows just enough to think that they're uber competent, and
Uh-huh.
not enough to know how ignorant they truly are.
Yeah. Well, and I've seen that when I thought, okay, oh God, I got to talk to a client about this area. I better get up to speed real quick. And where I used to go to other documents, I go to AI, and I found out, no, AI doesn't always give you the right answer. So you have to be careful. But I do think, I disagree with my wife, I think it's a huge educational tool. And if you structure it properly, it's going to move everybody forward much faster. That's my own opinion. My wife would disagree. And I have not said that she doesn't need to be in the loop.
Yeah.
She trains teachers.
You gotta listen to your wife.
Yeah. You got to have the human in the loop for that.
I think the way I would describe it is it's actually replacing imposter syndrome with that.
The what syndrome?
Imposter
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because you would have that complications where you're going like, no, this isn't genuine, it's not originally me, whatever. Now you're becoming overconfident.
Yeah.
Oh, this is me. Oh, I've got this.
Who, okay, I want everybody to be honest. Who has suffered at least 10 times in their life from imposter syndrome?
I talked to my therapist about it today.
Yeah. I mean, I get worried about it. At Exxon, I was always, they'd say, well, Ken, what do you think that well's going to do? And I'm like, more than it was before. But that's a really good point. Now we've got the Dunning-Kruger effect amplifying imposter syndrome.
But you're not taking ownership because you're basically saying, I'm good. Whereas before you'll go, well, I don't know because, am I really portraying myself correctly or am I pretending to be somebody?
Yeah.
You're going to pretend to be somebody and say, AI's got my back.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
I think it's even worse because now everyone is either, have you noticed, all of a sudden an expert,
Yeah.
or
Uh-huh.
you have people asking to be on panels because they assume that you're an expert. So they
Yeah.
You start to believe the hype of someone who doesn't even know you.
Yeah. Well, and that's the reason I liked I liked this part. Intellectual humility is going to be a competitive advantage because theoretically it should keep you away from that. And the amplification risk from AI, that the surface knowledge from AI creates an illusion of expertise. You can discuss it confidently without having a deep understanding.
It is also an important part of the Dunning-Kruger effect that highly knowledgeable people underestimate their expertise. The same
Oh,
effect works
interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I hadn't heard that before. That's a good point, though.
So I'm an app builder, and it just means that you feel like you don't know anything, and you're an imposter about a certain
That's
topic.
what the highly knowledgeable people think. But the layman thinks that he knows more than what he knows.
Exactly what he was just saying. I feel like as an app developer, you're touching on something that would make a really great app, which is like the Dunning-Kruger app to test if you have actual knowledge about something or if there's like,
Oh, yeah.
find all my blind spots.
Yeah. Well, we could all do that, and as long as we're all in the same room, we're all inventors if you just say one thing. So that would be pretty cool.
I have one of those apps. It's called a wife.
Yeah.
The wife app, yeah.
Hey, we're going to record that and send that to his wife, okay? Yeah. Yeah.
That's also free.
Franklin is trained well.
And actually on this, I spoke to my wife more about this because she trains teachers, right, in the San Juan district. So I said, how do you think it's impacting what I'm doing? Because I actually closed my office in downtown Davis, and I work from home, and I go see clients. It's much easier for me now. But she said daily priority discipline was bad for me because I'm doing, the other stuff first on the AI. I go, well, yeah, okay, I'll buy that. Scope and time limits, sort of going back to that other slide, right? Setting scope and time limits and reviewing progress. No, if I have a deadline, that's what drives me. I can't do, what is that Pomodoro technique? I have no idea how anybody would ever do that. Does everybody know what that is?
Yeah, it's 15 minutes long, take a break,
Yeah.
and then go back. It's a timing.
Yeah.
15 minutes to switch on the brain every time.
Yeah.
Try to review.
I just sit there for 8 hours, and then I go, oh, and my wife goes, you should eat something. I go, oh, okay, all right. Other behavioral management, mandatory verification, verify all AI output and track error patterns. I do agree with that, but I sort of do that. So that doesn't bother me because that's part of the exploration. If the AI is going wrong, I want to know that. Skill maintenance, it says, practice core skills regularly without AI. Why? I mean, I'm going to get something that can give me a foundation that I can do more in the AI. But why would I do core skills? And this is actually a question from everybody, and have to spend more time with it when I could go to AI and say, I'm learning some core skills, and I don't understand this aspect. Could you give me an explanation? Boom, I get it. It's like, definitions in the Apple iPhone when I'm reading a book. Anybody else? Anybody have a comment about that? The core skill part? How do you?
Like, I'm a good writer,
Uh-huh.
but now I've become more of an editor than a writer.
Uh-huh.
And I think there's maybe something like maybe once in a while I should just practice writing without AI.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Yeah.
Like I said, my skills has transferred from, writing to more editing.
Yeah. Yep.
Doesn't the career of a writer become the editor of the magazine?
I don't know.
Yeah. You had a comment?
Just along the lines of what you're saying, your skill, those core skills are going to drift because you're outsourcing some of those core skills. They're not your core skills anymore.
Yeah. Well, and
You decided to let
Yeah.
go of them, and that's
Yep.
if you're doing that consciously, that's fine. Don't do it unconsciously.
Yeah.
Right. Don't lose the ability to write well just so that
Yeah.
you can edit well.
Well, it's like.
Practice makes perfect, right? If you don't
Yeah.
actually practice something, you really haven't learned it.
That's what my wife would say. And I'd be disagreeing with her. But when she said core skills, I said, I know I need to lose weight. You know, I know I've got to do something about this, but, you know, there's only so much I can do.
Only thing, sorry. Only thing I'd like to add is,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think it is the most detrimental for children who don't have any understanding of anything.
Yeah.
If they start with this and that's it. At least for us, we know how to do integral
Yep.
calculus, differential calculus. We have come the conventional way, and we can validate this whether it is doing the right thing.
Yep.
But if the kids are trained on what this is trained on, then we are going to have.
Yeah, I totally agree. And then I'm going to come back just on the other side and say, you're smart enough to so that for the kids, you can adapt it so that they get the level of training that they need in foundational areas.
You may be right if you can align those incentives, but
Yeah.
Claude does not have my child's best interest
No.
in mind, right?
Yeah.
So if we're building AI systems with the intent of truly building intellectually children,
Mm-hmm.
they have to be tuned with that goal in mind.
Yep.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck providing the inputs to get it to consistently perform
Yeah.
that outputs. It's much more likely, and the reason your wife's right, is that the incentive will be how do we manipulate children to perform the best on standardized testing?
Mm.
And the manipulation can be at any cost.
Mhm.
Mental, physical health, all other intellectual pursuit. The machine will drive the children to perform for them their incentives.
Yep.
And it's a matter of society deriving the correct incentives.
And how do you provide oversight on something like that, right?
Yeah, there's no way to do oversight. You
Yeah.
have an AI
Mhm.
monitoring the other AIs. That's not just kids in the can.
Wasn't there the whole scenario where I think it was Claude, where they had to shut down an agent they had created because it was reviewing the CEO's emails and found out the CEO was having an affair, and then
Yes. I thought.
replace it so that
Was
you
it
don't
Claude? Yeah, it was pretty funny.
Scenario. It was a trial. You know, it was all
It was pretty funny, but that was just a trial, but it actually found that, right?
Yeah.
And the point is though, I mean, like what you're saying, like I mean, again, the challenge I think right now is there is no consensus
Mm-hmm.
right, to decide what AI should and should not do,
Yep.
and I think that's
Yeah.
where the
And
challenge is right now.
it's up to us, the
Yeah.
nerds, to red team
Yeah.
these systems as hard as we can because it's gonna get, you know, it's in an AI teacher's interest to convince that kid to drop out of school rather than teach them, right?
Yeah, if you're worried about economics, yeah, it depends on what your objective is, right?
Yeah,
So that's a very good point, and that's here now.
yeah.
And are they putting AI into for those of you that are still gamers? Is AI a component in gaming?
Not quite as much as it could be and will be in like the next 6 months.
Okay.
Like I haven't played any real games where you have AI characters come up to you and have like LLM type conversations. They
Mhm.
have their own personas and personalities. There are games like that out there, but there's no like what do you call the top tier games that I know of.
Okay.
Incorporated.
Fact or so far as you know?
Which one is
There was one.
you know,
There's one that's called Where Wind Meets. So we have a lot of interesting just AI to have you have a miniature bell on your NPC.
Okay.
And his behavior is also probably
Yeah.
The children comment, you know, everybody wants to take path of least resistance, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, I was appalled, like, you know,
Mhm.
my little one. So, I gave her some problem.
Mm-hmm.
Then, I didn't expect that she would just go to Gemini and get the answers, right? I would teach her math, so I
Yeah.
know where she is and whatnot.
Yep.
I was surprised. And then she tells me, well, you did not tell me I could not look up.
Yeah.
Then I said, yes, I did not tell you not to look up. But where is the understanding?
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay. You
Yeah.
use ChatGPT, you use whatever
Yeah.
you want to use. But the understanding has to be there, right? Even I look up on a day-to-day business
Mm-hmm.
for my work. But at least I make sure I'm fortunate enough to have read normal, physical textbooks
Yeah.
as to know sufficient.
Uh-huh.
I don't know anything. So I don't know how the society is going to come to the same page on this, because everybody's incentives are like how to get to Berkeley, how to get to MIT, right?
Well, I think that's
And
the,
they cannot verify these things.
Yeah,
I
well,
think that's the concept when item number 5.
Oh, okay.
Period.
Okay.
Know the difference between AI and forward. True expertise has
Yeah.
to be developed still.
And I think that's going to.
Yeah.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you so much for
You bet. Yeah, sorry I was late.
Thank you, everyone.
And this is the one that my wife always tells me about, and I always ignore. Work-life boundaries, establish hard stop times. She'll come in, and I'll be honest, I get irritated if she says, "Aren't you going to come eat?" When I'm in the middle of. It's sort of like my son up in the studio when he's in the middle of a game. He's not going to come down. But when I'm really cranking and about to get something, I don't know how to work with. But behavioral management is going to be a big piece throughout it. For innovation identification, I think it'll help, but you've got to have a kernel, a seed of something that's going to be innovative to be able to go down the right path. You can't just, you can say to it, hey, give me something really cool in the medical arena that I can go out and make a business out of. You won't get anything great. But if you have a kernel of something that's innovative, it can help pull you along that curve very, very quick. And from my standpoint, workflow automation tools are important because that's what I used to do with Exxon. Specialized visualization. Our visualization tools, in my opinion, are terrible. We should have much better visualization tools. Human AI collaboration interfaces. I think our user interfaces suck. I think they could be done much better. And every time I turn around, I go, God, I hate that part. But that's where we're at. Quality assurance, it can help with that, but it needs to be checked for its ability to make sure that it can do quality. Integration platforms that can connect AI with existing professional software ecosystems. I don't know, does anybody think that's going to really happen, or is the AI going to predominantly replace existing SaaS systems and other software systems?
well, you could imagine Zapier or whatever. They're
Mhm.
very interested in this guy.
Mhm.
There are whole firms popping up that are like AI.
Yeah. I actually read some of that. And then I think training and onboarding is going to be critical. Because if you have a company that doesn't have the expertise and some of your staff, well, just about all of your staff, in my opinion, based upon what I've seen with my son's company, then it's going to be problematic.
Is that kind of where the organizational change management function comes into play?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And
Professional client relationship evolution. I'm dealing with this right now, poorly. Clients think it's going to be faster, more comprehensive, and better documented, but they don't want to pay for it. So challenges, unrealistic speed, perfection expectations. That's on both the person using AI and the client. Perception that AI reduces cost versus increases value. It takes me more time because it actually points out things that I shouldn't let lie. And then questions about billable time for AI-assisted work. Well, I don't bill for the computer, but I do a much better job when I have AI. So the value versus cost discussion is one I've had with probably 3 clients recently, and I've just taken the position of, look, got a family, got to make so much, here's my rate. And that's
They're
it.
asking you to justify your current rate?
No, they're asking me, since I'm using AI and I should be able to cut my rate down by 90% to do this. Yeah.
wow,
Yeah.
really have confidence in it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
time you
Should
spend.
you tell them that you're using AI or not using AI? Because the contract is your goods and services that you deliver, right?
That's right.
Not
Well, that's like
what
I've got a manufacturing system with AI that produces the goods and services. But I tell them anyways because, from an ethical standpoint, I want them to know because I think that's a good thing that I'm doing that because I think I put out a better product.
You don't want to hide the fact.
Yeah.
No, it's not about hiding, but the contract is the contract, right? Not how the contract gets done. You can disclose, but maybe that's not what they should be concerned about.
Well, it's
Maybe
so
not.
easy to, I know this was AI generated just because you got the double
Yeah.
dashes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and
So that's like,
dashes.
dashes.
Yeah. And I said, throw a logo up there, I'm not going to spend any more time on things that I don't have to spend time on anymore. So that's good. I can look at the things that I think are important, but
But you probably made this presentation in half the time.
yeah, well, I should have done it in 10 minutes, but, I spent 3.5 hours. And I think I spent 30 minutes just trying to come up with the right title, which that wasn't a lot of value, but, I went through a lot to come up with that.
I'm sorry, it was a great presentation. I didn't mean like that, but I'm saying it helps. Like I'm a software developer, and
Uh-huh.
it has greatly reduced the amount of time I spend building features. Like I can just describe the feature now. Like I'm more of a project manager than a developer.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is, I guess, part of the career elevation.
Mm-hmm.
Software
That's a great point. And so, and I think you'd agree, if you're going to do it, start small and specific. Well, I'd rather have somebody else do that for me. For what I do in managing projects, like you've said, I'm not doing that. But building prompt libraries, I sort of have fun with that because I know when I've set up some prompts that didn't work and then I found some that did work, much better output. Human review gates. Yeah, okay. I think you've got to have that, right? But then when does the other, like I use the other LLM to review the output from the other LLM. So when does that happen? Train your team systematically. Now that I agree with because I bring interns into my office. It's cost me so much money because I think I'm going to train them to do X and they don't realize it. And so I think systematic training is going to be important because otherwise they go off in a direction that doesn't really create value for what you're doing. And address confidentiality up front, like with enterprise systems, right? Proper data handling. It's like, so I used to be the principal patent analyst at UC Davis. And so theoretically, everybody controlled the material transfers, biological material transfers, and nobody gave anybody anything proprietary without the appropriate agreements. That was just not true. And so we're going to find that the confidentiality aspect is going to be very difficult with AI because you're going to be tempted to do something like saying the ROI, I just put that up there, I have no idea. It helps me, but I haven't seen a return on investment. I've lost money
it's not
because
just
of it.
you.
Yeah.
It's not just you. I think that goes all the way up the ladder.
So a 15 to 30% efficiency gain typical for active users. I'm like, depends on if you were my wife and you're disciplined, I'd agree. With me, nah. But they talk about reduced billable hours, increased throughput capacity, higher quality, fewer revisions. Now that's true, like on that one contract, I saved the company $130,000 because I used AI. Otherwise, they would have just paid it. So we're going to see that kind of benefit. Risk management and ethical considerations. I think we've talked a little bit about that, but the hallucinated case law, I just say nobody should accept case law that they haven't checked into. That's all it is. They're trying to get through it quick, so they'll accept hallucinations.
So if you check your own work, you should be at least able to understand that you have to check somebody else's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
And case law is dominantly paywall.
Yeah.
It's behind
Well,
the
but
paywall.
you're already paying for the database. So. if you're prejudiced.
I mean, you're not gonna find, an LLM should not be trained on things that are supposedly confidential.
Most cases
Yeah.
it's behind a paywall.
Well, yeah, I mean, attorneys pay for it. I'm sure you pay for it.
Yeah, I'm part of the bar, so I get it a little bit cheaper, but
Cheaper.
yeah. But yeah, it's problematic. But inadequate review of AI output, that's hallucination, you know? And is it really hallucination? I was going to do this before I came up, but I said, I want a different word besides hallucination. Like lazy son of a gun, you know? How do you mitigate it? Mandatory verification protocols. Good luck on getting everybody to agree on that, right? Clear documentation of AI use. What's that mean? Secure enterprise AI platforms. But that means you don't get access to all the other knowledge and content that's out there. And then regular competency training. You know, I went through about 15 for this slide, and I finally gave up and said, yeah, I'll put that in. That's all right. And disclosure. Some jurisdictions do require disclosure of AI use. Now, in my opinion, I don't think it's any of their business, to be honest. As long as you can do it. Like, are they going to tell somebody they can't read a book or a treatise because it gives them an advantage? No, they should try to bring everybody up to the same level. And then professional responsibility framework, competence, diligence, confidentiality, and supervision. But AI is changing all that. You can't really treat it as a powerful tool requiring responsible oversight, because the way people work, they just want to get it done and they want to win the case. So, I think I'm just about through. Contract development. We've talked about that. Basically, what I've seen is I always get better contracts now. Much better than I did in the past. Future outlook. And these are some of the things I'm actually hoping for. Multimodal integration. You know, be able to put the front wheel of the bike up above the rear wheel when I'm doing something. Domain-specific models, you know, well, patent prosecution I don't think is really that tough. Litigation strategy is tougher because you've got a judge and a jury that really don't follow rules, right? It's always subject to their interpretation. So even if you try to train them on specialized legal corpora, it's always changing. And then real-time research and citations, live access to the case law and statutes with verified citations. There's absolutely no reason that somebody couldn't take and do that right now, but it would cost a lot. There should not have to be any hallucinations on case law, but you're going to have to train it a lot, right? So, key takeaways. Yeah, finally, I'm getting there. It's transformational, but it's not magical. You know, I don't sit down with it, and I'm sure everybody else sees this, and I go, holy crap, it came up with that for me. That was wonderful. It just doesn't happen. I have to nudge it along. Quality gains exceed speed gains. I believe that. I think when you're focusing on speed, it's got to be something that's very basic, that you can analyze and say, based upon that flow and the product that they're using, yeah, that's good. And I don't think about it because that's not what I do. The limitations: no patent drawings, hallucinated citations, weak numerical reasoning. I think that's sort of key limitations for it. And then human judgment does remain essential. AI augments lawyers, but doesn't replace strategic thinking. I mean, it'll give you a crappy strategy. I've had it do that for me. And then you've got to be thinking about the client relationships. And how can you have, you know, the right persona? It's like in the customer relationship software. It's like, oh, this is the persona? And so you can't have a perfect persona. I do believe this, that start now, not later, because I think the competitive gap between people that really understand and know how to use AI and what they're doing and those that don't, it's just, they're going to be in trouble. So the question is, how does society raise all boats with the high tide? I think that was it. I hope.
That's it.
Yeah, that was it. Well, thank you. I enjoyed this. Great questions too. Any questions?
So, yeah, I see a lot of AI projects where, it's integration of various things. They use an LLM, do the brain work, and then there's an output.
Mm-hmm.
And I can almost if someone tells me what they're doing, I can almost think of what they're doing and then sort of reverse engineer it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it worthwhile trying to patent any of these processes, or is it just, or is it just, your only real competitive mode is to get as much traction as you can?
Well, I think it's changed. I think it's where you've got to try to beat other people to the market, but you still want to have a patent as a barrier to entry. But I think trade secret protection is very important. But then if somebody gets, a concept for AI and just says, hey, I was looking at this the other day, and here's a few pages of the user interface, and it does this, this, and this, and ask it to do something, it's going to be much easier. So that's when a patent comes in handy. But on an ethical level, I don't know that I like things being slowed down by patents, even though I'm a patent attorney. Right?
Or can you develop your product and in parallel apply for the patent? Or
Sure. You don't even have to have it developed. You can just describe it in the application and file the patent before you ever put it out there, which is what you always want to do.
And the other thing I heard is software patents are almost they're hard or almost really.
Yeah, I think that's changed with AI, because you look at some of the case law and where everybody thought AI was going to basically say, well, we didn't like software patents before. I did, because I typically got paid more for those, right? But now with AI, it forces you to think about what you can do with it to really create a separation between what you're doing and how novel it is versus existing systems. And I think that's pretty easy to do. And you've seen some case law come out recently. I should have gotten the name of that one case where AI is okay. And I would say anybody in here, if they took AI and they sat for a little bit and brainstormed, I hate the term ideation, but I'll use it anyways, they're going to be able to innovate more effectively, and they shouldn't be penalized simply because they use another tool. Because that's what AI at the end of the day is, until it becomes something that runs our life.
And I've had a few discussions with some of the folks that are kind of processing the issue of, innovation and, protections around the ideas or the creative ideas, to the point where, there are at least some of the more AI-focused attorneys that are kind of transforming the market, or trying to transform the market, basically saying that your future development is going to be a screen recording and a video recording of proving that you were actually inputting the idea into the model.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's what you're protecting, is your creative thought of inputting into the model.
Yeah, you're back-propagating all your ideas.
Not the AI itself.
Yeah.
You're back-propagating all the ideas, right?
That's right.
I don't know how it works, especially in the patent, right? Because
Yeah.
you're doing prior art, right? Search. Right?
Everything builds on, the shoulders of something else beforehand. And that's all AI really does. It's a different way that it does it. I'm oversimplifying.
But then, a patent is a non-obvious combination of obvious elements, right, as I say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what AI is really good at, right? It can look at all the literature available, and then it says, instead of ABCDE, I can have EBCDA, and then that becomes a patent, completely patentable thing. So
Yeah.
somebody can just sit all day long and then generate different permutation. They can just permute ideas.
Yeah.
And then file patents, right?
Yeah. Well, on my end, I think that's going to happen. But what that needs is it needs the people that can do the other software. So, I'm not really the software guy. I'm sort of, more of the application development. And so what I'm trying to figure out is, how do you put together people with the expertise that can complement what I do from a patentability standpoint? But I think it's going to open up more patents. And the big thing, too, is the global competition. You look at Manus, right? And I was just blown away when I saw what it could do. Because I didn't push it that hard, but I was impressed.
No, Meta was
Pardon?
Meta bought Nanos.
Did they really?
Who bought them?
Changes every day.
So I'm curious, so how much should a startup founder have or budget if they are interested in pursuing a patent filing? Because, you know, if you don't have the resources to protect or enforce it, you know, is it, you know, isn't it, or, you know, I've always held the belief that it's better to just put the money in developing the technology.
Oh, I think that's still the case, you know, but now because things go faster, there was a period of time where, I forget what it was that changed, but filing patents became easier and it sped up, and it wasn't because the USPTO was doing things faster. But I think you have to balance that as a business manager. You want to say, okay, what threats do I have of other people entering the market? How can I get protection that's adequate? Is trade secret protection going to work? With AI, it's less likely because you can reverse engineer much more easily.
Yeah. But it also makes you more attractive if you're looking at licensing or acquisition.
Right.
Because you
So
have
all
patents.
things considered, say you know, a startup probably came to you, you know, like, is $100,000 enough? Just kind of like to start the process and, you know, reasonable protection, if, you know, in the U.S. for one territory. For
Yeah, I think so, depending upon the technology and how big the company is going to be and what their business model is. So it's sort of like get your business model together and let's talk about what we need from the standpoint of investment and patents and also trade secret technology, and then that'll drive it. But $100K for a startup means that you're actually going to be doing something decent. But you know, the 10 to 20K for a $15 million startup, that's not going to work because you're going to lose everything. So I still think it's important. And because of the global pressure from other countries, everybody's going after patents still. Like, what's the guy's name with NVIDIA? Jason Wang? Yeah. They're still going full bore on patents.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it makes sense for large companies. They have
Yeah.
the resources to, you know, send cease and desist, you know, pursue courts in every territory. But, you know, if you're starting out and you only have a limited budget and, you know, even if you're planning to raise like $5 million seed or something like that, you know, from an investment perspective, do I want them to put, you know, 20% of that on a patent, or do I want to have them just put everything into developing the technology first?
Yeah, I'd say I would, and I'm biased, but I actually investigated that because I had to do that for the other company because I had to tell them I wasn't going to do their work. And you typically look with successful companies, they're in the 10 to 15% range for IP, which includes patents and branding and trade secret systems. So,
Ballpark,
yeah,
rule of thumb.
yeah, I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb.
Professionals would help you a little bit.
And I've seen plenty of companies where, you know, they license and then small companies, and then they don't have enough money to even hold on to license the technology like from a university. So I think I think today that's more important than ever to think about it. So, well, I've got to file a patent tonight, so. See, is that one mine? Yeah.
Thanks so much, Ken.
Yeah, that was well. I love the question.